The news that legendary Korean actor Lee Soon-jae had passed away at the age of 91 was already enough to leave the entire nation in a state of stunned silence. But no one expected what would come next. Only a few hours after his death on November 25, 2025, the late actor's long-sealed will was officially released to the public, and what it contained shook the entertainment world to its core. It wasn't just the staggering size of the fortune he had accumulated over nearly 7 decades in the spotlight. It was the name of the heir written on the final page, and the heartbreaking reaction of his wife the moment she heard it read aloud. According to legal representatives and family sources, Lee Soon-jae's total estate was valued at approximately 120 billion KRW, equivalent to about $92 million USD. This extraordinary figure included decades of earnings from dramas, films, theater, teaching contracts, public appearances, long-term endorsements, and multiple real estate investments across Seoul and Gyeonggi Province. Even for a national icon of his stature, the number was far larger than anyone in the industry had ever imagined. Yet the most shocking revelation was not the size of the inheritance, but to whom it was left. As the executor finished reading the final clause, Lee Soon-jae's wife, who had stayed silent throughout the proceeding, suddenly burst into tears that echoed through the room. Those present described her reaction as a mixture of shock, grief, and a truth she had carried alone for years. For the late actor had left nearly the entire 120 billion fortune to one person, his eldest son, Lee Sung-hyun. And in that moment, the meaning behind the decision, the weight of their family history, and the unspoken regrets of a lifetime collided. To outsiders, the choice may have seemed expected. After all, leaving one's wealth to a son is not uncommon. But those who knew the family intimately understood that this decision was far from simple. In the Korean entertainment world, rumors of past tensions between Lee Sung-jae and his children had circulated for years. Some speculated that the actor, who spent most of his life on stage or on set, had not been emotionally present in his son's upbringing. Others whispered that there had been unresolved matters within the family, especially during the actor's busiest decades, from the 1970s to the 1990s, when he worked relentlessly, sometimes filming 3 projects at once, barely returning home except to sleep. His wife, who had stood by him for more than half a century, knew the truth behind those long years better than anyone. She had witnessed the price of stardom, the nights he returned home exhausted, the days he skipped family gatherings because of shooting schedules, the countless milestones he missed in their children's lives, and the guilt he carried deep in his heart, guilt he rarely expressed aloud. That is why, when the will was read, her tears were not tears of shock over the heir, nor tears of anger, but tears of recognition. It was the final message left by a man who had spent a lifetime trying, in his own imperfect way, to make up for the time lost to fame. The will stated clearly that over 95% of the estate, 114 billion KRW, approximately $87 million USD, would go to his eldest son, while the remaining amount was to be divided into charitable contributions to arts education programs, scholarships, and theater preservation projects, causes that had defined the latter years of his life. He left a smaller personal allowance to his wife, not because he loved her any less, but because the two had agreed long ago that what they valued most was not money, but the life they built together. She later explained through trembling words, he always felt he failed as a father. This was his last attempt to give his son something he could never give during his lifetime. The public response was immediate and emotional. Some praised the actor's decision as a meaningful act of reconciliation. Others wondered whether the enormous sum could heal wounds created by absence and decades of unspoken strain. Korean social media exploded with commentary. One user wrote, "He left money, but what he really left was an apology." Another commented, "His wife's tears broke my heart. Only she knew what those years truly felt like." Even fellow actors expressed that the will reflected the late star's deeply human side, more vulnerable and sincere than the powerful characters he portrayed on screen. Industry insiders have spoken out in the days after the revelation, recalling how Lee Soon-jae often voiced regret about not being able to devote enough time to his family. One director recounted that the actor once confessed during a private dinner, "I missed more birthdays than I can count. I missed school plays. I missed important conversations, but I always hoped my children knew I loved them." Another actor said that during breaks on set, the veteran performer would sit quietly, reading scripts yet occasionally staring into the distance as if thinking about someone far away. He never said much, but everyone could sense the heaviness in his gaze. Yet despite these regrets, Lee Sung-jae's life was one of unwavering dedication to his craft, to his students, and ultimately to his family. His incredible wealth did not come from commercial extravagance, but from decades of hard work, consistency, and passion. He never bought luxury cars simply to show off, and he rarely flaunted his success. Many junior actors have revealed that during filming he ate the same simple lunch as everyone else, refused special treatments, and insisted on standing during long shoots, even when younger actors begged him to rest. "If I sit, I lose focus," he would say. The release of his will has triggered a nationwide reflection on what legacy truly means. For some, it is measured in money. For Lee Sung-jae, it was measured in responsibility. Responsibility he felt he owed to his son, the child whose milestones he missed, the young man who grew up watching his father from afar, the adult who eventually understood the burdens behind the spotlight. It is said that when the will was finally closed and the pen was placed back into its case, Lee Sung-jae's wife whispered only one sentence: "He can rest now." And for the millions of people who admired him, those words felt painfully true. After a lifetime of carrying the weight of his roles, his expectations, and his silent regrets, the man who lived and breathed the stage had given his last performance, one final gesture of love, remorse, and reconciliation. Lee Sung-jae may be gone, but the legacy he left behind, both in his work and in his final act as a father, will continue to echo in the hearts of those who admired him. His estate may have been valued at $92 million, but the real value of his legacy lies in the lessons he left behind. That even the greatest stars remain human, that success often comes with sacrifice, and that love, even when expressed late, still carries immense power. In the days following the announcement, discussions surrounding Lee Sung-jae's will grew into something much larger than a simple inheritance debate. It evolved into a national conversation about the meaning of legacy, sacrifice, and the often invisible emotional price paid by those who dedicate their lives to the public. Countless Koreans began sharing their own reflections online. Children who grew up with absent fathers due to work, parents who realized they had given their careers more time than their families, and fans who suddenly saw the legendary actor not just as a great artist, but as a human being who battled regrets like everyone else. Experts in family psychology even weighed in, explaining that the overwhelming majority of Lee Sung-jae's fortune being left to his eldest son was not merely a financial choice, but a symbolic one. It was, in essence, a confession, a closing of a wound he had carried quietly, a gesture that whispered, "I couldn't be there for you then, but let me protect you now." And for many Koreans, this struck a painful but deeply relatable chord. His wife's reaction, her trembling shoulders, the tears she fought to hold back but couldn't, became one of the most discussed moments. Viewers re-watched the footage in silence, noting the way she pressed her hand to her chest, as though the words had reopened memories she tried for years to heal. Those who knew her personally revealed that she had spent decades trying to balance her husband's brilliance with the loneliness that often came with being married to a national treasure. She stood behind him at premieres, award shows, press conferences, always smiling, always proud, but at